person recording the presentation to give you the go-ahead. All righty. So my name is Diana Lorenz, and over the past several months, I have been serving along with Diane Diamond, Jim Fancher, Vicki Keller, and Sally Nurse on a task force that has been working towards securing Naperville landmark status for the sanctuary building. The first thing we had to do was write an application document. That document ended up being 171 pages long and was delivered to the city of Naperville at the end of September. I'd like you all to mark your calendars for Thursday evening, December 4th at 7 p.m. because that is when we need to make a presentation in support of the application before the Naperville Historic Preservation Commission, and we'd love to have a lot of people there to support us. We're also hoping that many of you will further support the application by sending email comments to the commission in advance of the meeting or by giving a statement of support at the meeting, and further instructions on how to do that will be forthcoming. What you're going to be hearing today is the presentation we'll be giving at that meeting. Note that the decision of whether to grant landmark status is determined based on whether the building adheres to specific criteria. So we've tailored this presentation towards addressing those criteria. Throughout the presentation, the criterion being addressed will be given in bold at the top of the slides, as will the page numbers in the application document where further details can be found. So at the presentation that night, I will be introducing the committee, and then we will begin. We are here seeking to landmark the First Congregational Church of Naperville. This church is a congregation of the United Church of Christ, whose constitution grants each congregation autonomy over its own property, and the bylaws of the local church affirm this. The governing body of the local church, the Council of Ministries, voted this past April to pursue Naperville landmark status, and the 5 of us were chosen to represent the congregation, that is to say, the building owners, in that endeavor. We intend to show you today that the church deserves landmark designation because of its history, its people, and its architecture. The property in question is the sanctuary building on the northwest corner of Benton Avenue and Center Street. The congregation owns 3 buildings on that site, but it is only the easternmost building for which landmark status is being sought. This building is well over 50 years old, with its construction beginning in 1905 and its dedication occurring in May of 1906. Aside from a few minor upgrades, the exterior has remained unchanged since its dedication. The congregation was founded in 1833, only 2 years after Naperville itself was founded. From Naperville's earliest days and for nearly 2 centuries since, a continuous stream of church leaders has influenced the history of both the congregation and the community at large. These people left their mark on this building, and the spiritual guidance they found in the building left its mark on them. Among the earliest of these leaders were Israel and Avis Blodgett, who were part of the National Abolitionist Movement, and Henry and Thankful Goodrich, who donated land for a forest preserve, now known as Goodrich Woods, and for a public school that now houses the Hobson Cooperative Nursery School. Other leaders from the 19th century include James Nichols, who bequeathed the funds used to found Naperville's original Nichols Library. Hiram Cody, who was a judge and a delegate to the Illinois State Constitutional Convention of 1870. Willard Scott, an early Naperville banker and merchant. And George Martin, an owner of the Martin and Bonovan Brick and Tile Company, whose quarry later became Centennial Beach, His former home is now known as the Martin Mitchell Mansion, and his estate, which was donated to the city, is now the site of Naperville Settlement, Naperville Central, Knock Park, Sportsman's Park, the Garden Plots, the Naperville Cemetery, and part of the grounds of Edward Hospital. Many churchgoers from the 20th century were also influential in the community. Genevieve Tousley captured the history of the early community in her articles for the Naperville Clarion and the Naperville Sun. A statue dedicated to her sits at the corner of Chicago and Washington. Jane Sint was instrumental in the founding of the Naperville Heritage Society and Naper Settlement, and in moving St. John's Episcopal Church, now known as the Century Memorial Chapel, to that location. She also played a key role in starting the farmers market at Fifth Avenue Station and in establishing the Prairie Path. Sig and Hildy Blankenhorn spearheaded early recycling efforts in Naperville. And Dottie Kretschy was responsible for the founding of the Hobson Co-op Nursery School and Little Friends. Dave Rawson became the United States Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy. Diane Herr, who was one of the church's many Bell Labs employees, was a vice president of product management for that company, as well as a recognized leader in the church and in the United Church of Christ. And Ron Keller, who was the director of the Naperville Municipal Band for 57 years, was also a member of the congregation. Bios of other influential church members can be found in the application document. Perhaps more than even this impressive group of individual members, it is the history of the congregation itself that makes this building worthy of historical landmark status. Founded in 1833, it is the oldest church in DuPage County and the oldest congregational church in northern Illinois. Many area churches can trace their roots back to First Congregational. The bell in the church tower predates the rest of the building. From 1846 until the construction of the current building, the congregation met in a frame building on the same site. This bell was a fixture in that building, and it played a role in a well-known story from Naperville's earliest days. Naperville was the county seat from the time DuPage County was established in 1839 until it lost its position to Wheaton in an 1867 referendum. However, Naperville, being reluctant to cede the position, held on to the court records, prompting a group of Wheatonites to execute a midnight raid to confiscate the records from the courthouse. Judge Hiram Cody, whom we met earlier, ran to the Congregational Church and rang this bell to alert the populace to the emergency. Unfortunately, Wheaton prevailed that night and in later court battles, and Naperville is no longer the county seat. But the story lives on, as does this bell, which was moved to the new building in 1906. The congregation started to outgrow the 1846 building in the late 1800s. The building was remodeled in 1897, but the result was unsatisfactory, and the services of an architect were enlisted to draw up plans for a sturdier spiritual home for the congregation. From the beginning, the construction of the new building attracted a lot of attention in early 20th century Naperville, then a town of 3,000, and townspeople were given regular updates on the building's progress in the Naperville Clarion. Local tradesmen were employed in its construction, and the local populace contributed to its cost, allowing the church to be dedicated totally debt-free in May of 1906. Neighboring churches suspended their own services on the morning of the dedication, and their congregations joined in celebrating the completion of construction. Nearly 1,400 people attended the dedication services that day, a sizable percentage of the total population of the town. There were 2 services that day, a morning service and an evening service. There were almost 800 people at each service. Imagine 700 people in each of those services. Of note is that the same congregation has occupied the building since this 1906 dedication, making it the oldest church in Naperville with that distinction. From early adoption of recycling to recent work to find alternatives to coal-based energy sources, the church has sought to serve the world through its care for our environment. From the work of founding members on the Underground Railroad to the civil rights struggles of the 1950s and 60s, to the inclusion of women and marginalized populations in church membership and leadership positions, the church has sought to serve the nation by being at the forefront of social justice initiatives. From its 33 years as a host site for DuPage Pads to its 15 years of providing space for Community Access Naperville, the church has sought to serve the surrounding community by caring for those in need. And this site and this building have been the center of operations for it all. Also of historical note is the fact that former President Barack Obama spoke at the church during his campaign for the United States Senate in 2004. The style of the building is Gothic Revival, and many of the distinguishing features of that architectural style can be seen in the building. First, the building is of stone construction, using limestone sourced from the Joliet quarries, since the Naperville quarries had just ceased production in 1904. Second, patterns can be seen in the stonework throughout the building, including dental ornamentation, a crenellated or notched bell tower, and decorative string courses. Third, the use of pointed arch windows and doors can be seen throughout the building. Fourth, strong vertical lines draw the eye upwards. Fifth, the building has a high-pitched roof line and vaulted ceilings. And finally, the interior touches of the building include such features as stained glass windows and dark paneling, such as that on the ceiling. The stained glass windows are particularly noteworthy. There are 27 of them in total, with 15 in the sanctuary, 5 in the narthex that faces Benton Avenue, 1 above a false ceiling on the north side of the building, and 6 in the library on the northwest corner of the building. The 5 largest windows were created specifically for the 1906 building and are memorials to prominent members of the community, including Jonathan and Polly Royce, after whom Royce Road is named, Pomeroy Goodrich, a founding church member, Judge Hiram Cody, George Martin, and A.S. Barnard, who is James Nichols's father-in-law. 4 other memorial windows were relocated from the 1846 church to the new building and honor the Crampton, Earl, Scott, and Nichols families. The building architect was M.J. Morehouse, a prolific Chicago architect who lived from 1868 to 1952. In Naperville, he not only designed both the church's sanctuary building in 1905 to 1906 and its parish house, the middle building, in 1929 to 30, but he also designed John Goodwin's Heatherton Mansion, which was built in 1903, but destroyed by fire in 1920. He was also the architect for a substantial renovation of the Oakhurst building in Naperville. This building, better known as Willoway, is now occupied by the Maison Sabika restaurant. He designed many other buildings in the Chicago area, including the Illinois Golf Club in Northbrook, Illinois, and a substantial renovation of the Mandarin Inn restaurant in Chicago. And we have a partial list of the places that he designed in Chicago in the application document. He also designed several buildings in Battle Creek, Michigan, both for the Kellogg's Company and for the Battle Creek Sanitarium. In around 1935, Mr. Morehouse retired to the Burge Plantation in Georgia, and he was instrumental in turning the property into an architectural and horticultural showplace. Burge Plantation is now on the National Register of Historic Places. Also worth noting is that the developer of the property was Morris Slate. Mr. Slate, after whom Slate Street was named, donated the land for the church, with the proviso that the church always have a bell tower and the property never contain a cemetery. After soliciting several bids from contractors, the 1906 Church Building Committee decided to reject them all and to supervise the construction themselves. Members of the committee, all of whom were important Naperville citizens of the time, included William Goodwin, Chair, Charles Nadelhofer, Elizabeth Scott, Mrs. James Nichols, Bernard Becker Sr., and John Johnson. John Schifferly was hired as the master carpenter and A.H. Beidelman as the lead mason. Local craftsmen were hired to assist in the construction. The building is not on the National Register of Historic Places, but it is within Naperville's Federal Historic District. In summary, there are many reasons why the First Congregational Church of Naperville deserves to be landmarked. Its history, its people, and its architecture are all noteworthy. It is the oldest church in DuPage County. Founded only 2 years after the city itself was founded, its members have been influential members of the community from the beginning until the present day. An historic bell still occupies its bell tower. A well-known architect from the Chicago area designed the building, which is an excellent example of Gothic Revival architecture, with beautiful stained glass windows dating back to 1846 and 1906 that memorialize early leaders of Naperville. The building was built using local materials and local craftsmen, and its construction was supported by the entire community. It has the distinction of being the oldest church building in Naperville that is still occupied by the same congregation, and its beauty, still evident after more than 100 years, bears witness to its history. That's it. So I have promised Catherine that we will clear out of here for the pageant. So, but the members of the committee will be in the coffee hour if you want to discuss further.